Today's lesson is on writing a function as an equation. A function rule is an equation that describes a relationship between those inputs and outputs. So we learned last lesson that your inputs are always your x value because you're inputting it into the equation, and then your output is going to be that y value because that's the value that is being spit out of the equation once you calculate whatever you're doing to x. So you can take that and you can write a rule, a function rule. And we learned this before as actually being your slope-intercept form. That is one type of function rule. So we're going to kind of use that knowledge and write a rule for the given information here. So when we say that the output, which is your y value, is 5 less than the input, okay, well, your input is x, and we need to have 5 less than that. An equation you can write is your output is 5 less than your input. We can take this information. You will see this is in slope-intercept form. So we can take this information and we can actually graph that then, like we learned how to do before, by using an input-output or an XY table. So I'm just going to use the numbers -1, 0, and 1, and then we can figure out what our outputs are going to be. So when your input is -1, your output is going to be -6. When your input is 0, it's -5, and when your input is 1, it's -4. So we can use this input-output table to create a graph then. So functions, you can look at them graphically, you can look at them as a table, or you can look at them as a rule put into an equation form. Okay, so real quick refresher on graphing these types of things. If you have -1, -6, remember we're going to just -1, -6. 6 is going to be right here. 0, -5 is going to be there, and then 1, -4 is going to be there. So remember, you plot your points, and you can play connect the dots, and you can draw the line through, and it becomes that linear function. So another piece here to write a function rule, when maybe it's not necessarily a linear function, maybe it's not something that you're normally used to seeing, is when you say that the output, or your y value, is the square of the input. Okay, so take your input, which is x, and then square it. This actually is not a linear function. So when you look at this, we can again put our inputs as whatever values you want. You can do -1, 0, and 1. And then it's going to be the square of that. So the square of -1 is 1. The square of 0 is 0. The square of 1 is 1. This is one of my favorite types of equations to graph because it really makes a neat looking graph. So when you square your input, so you have -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, it actually creates a V. It's pretty cool looking. So it'll go like this. So you're writing your function rule can create some pretty neat looking functions. So you can also take a mapping diagram and create the rule from that. If you want to pause this video and try it, go for it. But you're going to see the difference in what am I doing to x to get to y each time. So if y is going to equal, so 0 to get to 0, 1 to get to 4, 2 to get to 8, 3 to get to 12, well, I'm taking x's value and I'm timesing it by 4. That is the function that is going to be. So we can look at functions a couple different ways. You can look at it graphically, like this one up here. You can look at it in a table format. You can describe a function as an equation. You can also look at it as a mapping diagram. So we can apply it to real life. But we're going to take a look at here, different representations of functions. So like I was just saying, you can represent a function as words, or an equation, or an input-output table, mapping diagram, or even a graph. So different ways to look at functions.